You shaved already, right?
I did.
The makeup artist already came and everything?
Not yet.
They powdered your nose or powdered your face and everything? They took all the blemishes off?
There's nothing they can do anymore.
So, for the record, why don't you state your full name?
My full name? James K.O. Lewis, Lewis, Stanfield Jr. Born October 20th, 1938. And I think it was Middletown, New York.
And where did K.O. come from? Where did Lewis come from?
Lewis, I would say, was a family name. But I got it mixed up. It's even in the records as Louis. So I got to straighten it out.
Oh, really? So it's spelled incorrectly?
Yeah, well, I did it. I probably did it by mistake myself, and some of the driver's license and so on. That's what happens when you're young and inexperienced.
And K.O.?
K.O. Was a nickname, comes from a comic strip. Actually, it means, it's when you spell it, well, a couple of ways, a K-O or K-A-Y-O. And there was a young character, little baby called K.O., probably back in the 30s. A cartoon character. And my parents had a restaurant right in Otisville, right next to where the firehouse is, the Otisville Fire Department. They had a restaurant there. And we had a sanatorium up on the side of the small mountain in our small little town of about 1,000 people or 1,200. And the sanatorium was where they brought people up that had tuberculosis. It's a TB center. And we were about, like I said, Otisville, New York, between Middletown and Port Jervis, New York. About 90 miles from New York City, above New York City. So anyway, the people that worked up at the sanatorium would come down to restaurants for a little lunch or whatever. I was a tiny little baby in this little seat, like on a table or a bench or whatever. They keep me up there. And of course, this character was very famous at the time, so everybody would come in and say, "Oh, there's little K.O." All right, his little basket. And that's where the character was in the cartoon, I guess, in a little, whatever they call it, a basket or whatever. But actually, believe it or not, my father had been a boxer. And not only like in school days, but later on for several years, amateur boxer. So, of course, there's another story about the word K.O.
I see, K.O., like knockout.
Knockout.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
anyway, in our little town, I lived there for 50 years before my wife and I, Nancy, and some of the children moved to East Ham, Cape Cod.
Before we get to that, let's talk about your parents now.
My parents?
Would you state your parents' name?
Mary Rosa. All right.
Okay.
Stanfield. Rosa was her birth name. Her mother was Anna. I think her mother was Anna. She came from Budapest, Hungary. All right. Mm-hmm. Now here's a story about her. She was married twice, this Anna. Her first husband was Hungarian. Litwak was her first husband. And they had several children, I don't know how many, before he worked on the railroad. There was a railroad right where they lived in this town called Chehola, Pennsylvania. But their little place in Chehola was called Parker's Glen. And that's where, very close to the Delaware River, and right behind them, on this little hillside, was the railroad track. All right? And that's where the trains passed by, going from one area to the next. Well, anyway, he was killed working on this railroad. Now she meets this Italian called Rosa. His name was Rosa. She marries him, and they're married, I don't think very long, because maybe she had one or two children. I think there were two. I think my mother, and then Carl, maybe his name was, or was the brother. But anyway, she was very young. I don't know how many years or months or whatever, when he was killed working on the railroad. You know? They're very close to these trains, and I don't know. I thought it was kind of strange that...
Occupational hazard, I think they call it.
Yeah, or I didn't know, too, whether there was a dispute against different cultures or something, or, I may be wrong bringing that up, but...
Almost could foul play have been involved?
Foul play or something, because there were different cultures at the time, and I don't know whether they got along as well or what, but that's entered my mind. Again, it may not have anything to do with it.
So she had two children.
Yeah, the last time with the Italian husband.
And those two children, one being your mother.
Oh, yes.
And
I think it was Carl.
Carl.
I may be wrong with the name Carl, but I believe there was just two of them. The first family, Litwak, was somewhat bigger, larger family.
So do you have memories of what kind of memories do you have of your grandmother then?
Very small. I have pictures. I have nice pictures of her. I think there's one of her holding me as a baby. I remember the home they lived on. As a matter of fact, here in the last number of years, I've gone to that home site where they've redone the home over, the new owners. I think we sold that property, and my father did, and mother sold it in, I think, 1950, I don't know, for $3,000. I'm thinking about $3,000. And so he could start an oil business. Stanfield Brothers Oil Company, back in 1950. So I'm out.
Why don't we take a break here?